It is still very much Christmas. And to some, Christmas is just getting started. Some, their family weren't able to come to town on Christmas Day, so they're arriving today or tomorrow. Some people have saved their presents until all the grandparents are able to get into town. Some have had the week off and are just getting ready to go away and really unwind. And Christmas is full and rich. And others are glad to be on the other side of that Christmas day, the first Christmas day without somebody close to their heart. Some, the fact that Christmas lasts 12 days is an incredible joy, and they're out of school. And for some, if the 12 days could just move on and winter could give way to a new spring. But we told that story. We told that story that's been told again and again, and we ask ourselves, shouldn't it be less arbitrary than that, how we experience Christmas? Shouldn't all of us have something burning in our hearts that can't be put out? Shouldn't Christmas be so evident that regardless of what this year brings or next year brings or when family comes to town or who isn't gathered around the table, that we know because of that fire in our belly, that light that just radiates, that Christmas is here, that Christ has come? Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes we feel it. Sometimes it seems to fleet. But the truth that remains is one that we have to hold on to, and sometimes that takes intention. And I think John was dealing with that. John was writing, depending on when you give him credit for writing, either 60 to 80 years after, or 50 to 80 years after Jesus' death. So about 80 to 100 years, or 110 years after these events have taken place. And he's writing during a difficult time in our history. He's writing during a time where Christianity was a little bit like a flickering flame that may or may not survive. Whether as a branch of Judaism or as its own religion, people who were proclaiming that Christ was born, that Christ had come into their hearts, were being imprisoned. The temple had been destroyed. There was persecution. There was doubt. Christ hadn't come back again. So he writes the same story. The same story that we enacted with wise men and shepherds and hay strewn everywhere. He tells that story, the same story with John letting us know that Christ is coming. He tells that same story in words that supersede human language. Words that St. Augustine and John Chrysostom, two of our godfathers of our faith, said that human language could not have produced such beautiful words, that they have to have been inspired from God. But what he's trying to do is to give us the assurance that whether this story burns brightly in our hearts, there is an indelible truth and a constancy to God that is there in the prison cell in the first century, that is there amidst whatever this Christmas brought you this year, that will be there tomorrow. That there is a light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. That the Word that created all things became flesh. And on Christmas Eve night, I talked about Barbara Brown Taylor's beautiful reflection on what it was for God to come in and for heaven to break open and God to come in the form of a baby. But that same God that created everything and looked upon it and said how incredibly beautiful it was, but it was like an incredible artist that's done a painting and forgotten to sign it. There was nothing that truly reflected the image of God. And so he created humankind. And he loved them. He reveled in them. He wished he could be flesh like they were, and then he saw how they hurt. He saw how they hurt one another. And he saw how they forgot about him. And it caused such absolute grief that he spent centuries, from the prophets we read about today, he spent centuries planning how he could break into people's hearts so they would know that that light, that truth shines indelibly, forever. The only way was to become flesh, was to be in the darkness. Because the only way that you know that there is no way the darkness supersedes the light is if the light is right beside you in the darkness. And so the Word became flesh. So yesterday, my sister had promised before she left town that she would take the kids to go see Star Wars. And so she was getting ready to leave, and it was the last showing before she was departing. So at 10 o'clock, we had to be at the movie theater, and getting everybody going in the morning wasn't the easiest thing. So we were running 15 minutes late, and it was about 10:02 as we were right there at that Manassas traffic light to take a left into the movie theater. And right there was a woman, a very tired woman with a sign made on a sheet of cardboard, homeless and hungry. And she was holding that sign up. And certainly the most compassionate in our family, my daughter, had this look on her face that my wife saw in the rearview mirror as she's just thinking it's 10:02 and we need to get to the movie theater. We'll miss the previews. And she looks in and she sees the heartbreak on my daughter's face. And she realizes how much she is aching for this person. And yet the light turns green and we go about our day. And we try to assure my daughter that things will be okay for this person. But that's not enough for God. God said, they will not trust that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it by driving by dipping low, but by getting out of the car, by standing there with his arm around her, holding that cardboard sign. That's what the incarnation is. It's the promise that God will always be with us. In the most joyful Christmases, in the most empty Christmases, in the day after Christmas, in our high points, in our low points, God has walked with us. And that's a truth that we can't extinguish. And it's a truth that's been there since the beginning of time. That love, it didn't just happen when that baby was born. That love led to it, and that love led from it, and that love brings us here today. Elie Wiesel, a Jewish writer who was imprisoned in the Holocaust, writes about an experience. And it's about kind of what the incarnation was for his people during that time of incarceration, of incredible death, of incredible pain and hardship, a time where God seemed entirely absent. And he talked about folks sewing bits of matzah into their cloaks so that they would trust that God was with them, even amidst the worst things humans can do for one another. But he describes this one moment in time when hope was nearly extinguished, and 3 innocent people charged with minute crimes were going to be hung in the gallows. One of them was a young boy. As they prepared for all of them to be hung, and before they kicked out the chair, one of the gentlemen who had totally lost hope says from behind this gentleman's ear, "Where is your God now? Where is God now?" As the platforms are pushed away to die very quickly, and the young child struggles, he says again, "Where is your God?" Somehow, like inspiration, like the way the words of John somehow came into John, the gentleman said, "He's there hanging in the gallows." Christmas is about joy, but it's about an enduring truth. Even when joy is hard to experience, even when we put away the decorations, hope does endure. And the assurance that there is a light that will never, ever be absent from us. That the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. That the Word became flesh so that every experience of being in the flesh is not absent from God or from the light. Christmas is our proof that God stopped the car, got out, put his arm around us, and held that homeless and hungry sign with us so that we would know every step of our life, in this life and in the life to come, God is with us. Emmanuel has come. The light has shined. Amen.